Fine, the juice is back. Today we're talking about the Western Conference playoffs and how it's been playing out so far after two games. First, we'll talk about the Memphis Grizzlies against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, if you watched the first video, you'd know that we talked about how Oklahoma City's defense is super elite versus Memphis's top three shooting zones. Memphis has still been doing a good job scoring at the rim, but they're last out of everyone in the playoffs at shooting in the paint and from shooting above the break threes. OKC has been middle of the pack scoring at both the rim and above the break three, but second at scoring in the paint. And you'll remember that we try to figure out a way Memphis could have an advantage to maybe steal a game from Oklahoma City, and that was the transition game. We knew Memphis was pretty good in transition, but we also knew OKC was pretty good at limiting transition opportunity. And after two games in this series so far, it looks like OKC is winning that because Memphis is only averaging 4 points on the fast break in this series. Memphis was a great spot up shooting team as well, and OKC gave up a lot of spot up shooting opportunities but a low shooting percentage. Memphis currently in the series is shooting 27% on 22 opportunities a game with spot up shots. And we gave you a player prop. It was Lou Dort over 2.5 threes. Lou Dort missed this line in game 2 as he went 2 for 7 from 3. But don't let that discourage you from still hammering this for the rest of the series, as he's averaging 3 makes from 3 so far in the first 2 games. He's shooting 39% from above the break 3 and 50% from corner 3. All but one of his field goal attempts per game in this series have been from 3. He's averaging 8.5 field goal attempts a game. He's averaging 7.5 3-point attempts per game. I'm still sticking with our original picks here, sticking with Lou Dort over 2.5 threes a game and OKC sweeping Memphis, because it looks like they will not be able to capitalize on those 2 possible opportunities they had to capitalize on. And now we will talk about the Golden State Warriors versus the Houston Rockets. Last time we talked, I pointed out how both of these teams struggle offensively. And as of these playoffs, both teams are in the bottom 4 of all playoff teams in field goal percent and bottom 5 in points per game. We also talked about how Houston struggled during the season to cover off-screen shots. Golden State in these playoffs is first in pull-up shooting, which is shooting off the dribble, so coming around the screen and taking a shot, but near the bottom in catch and shoot field goal percent. So a guy coming off a screen, catching the ball and shooting. We are looking for a way Houston could capitalize with their offense to beat Golden State in this series. We were looking at Golden State not being able to cover spot up shooters, but we also knew that Houston doesn't have shooters like that. And after looking at the numbers so far in this series, Houston's still struggling with their spot up shooting. And this could be why Golden State took game 1. And you probably all know that Mr. Jimmy Butler left game 2 after only playing 8 minutes. And then after he left the game, you could see how much easier it was for Houston to move the ball and score in the paint without Jimmy Butler on the floor. I highly doubt Jimmy misses any games due to this pelvis contusion because he's so hard-headed and stubborn. Houston is dominating time of possession in this series and has the second most paint touches per game in the entire playoffs, second to only Denver. They are clearly trying to take advantage of their massive size mismatch down low. That being said, they are also dominating the offensive rebounding and defensive rebound. So if Golden State continues to fail with their shooting, Jimmy Butler's injury is going to nag on even if he plays. And with Houston's pure dominance down low with rebounding and paint offense using their size, then I'm afraid we're going to get this one wrong, boys, and Houston could beat Golden State. Now, let's talk about a little bit of a surprise for me and others. Minnesota versus the Lakers. Now, before the series, we talked about how the Lakers are one of the best isolation teams in all of the NBA and how Minnesota is one of the worst defenses against isolation offense. To go along with that, we also talked about how Luka and Lebron are both top 20 in the entire NBA in isolation offense this season. Now let's break that down into how both of those guys have been performing these playoffs so far. Well, let's start with Luka. Luka's averaging 21 drives and finishing with a 56% field goal percentage, but only tallying 1 assist. Also, his pull-up shooting, remember, it's shots coming off the dribble. His pull-up shooting has been horrendous. He's taking 13 of those a game and only shooting 33% off of those pull-up jumpers. To make it even worse, 31% from three-point range. If you think that's bad, this is going to be worse. Let's talk about LeBron. LeBron's drives per game is actually down 3 per game from what he was doing in the regular season. He also finished with a 53% finishing rate in the regular season, whereas in the playoffs so far, he's finishing on his drives with a 33% field goal percent and less than 1 assist. LeBron's also struggling with his pull-up shooting, in which he's taking 7 attempts and hitting 31% of those. It looks like Minnesota is forcing the Lakers' secondary players to beat them by keeping Rudy Gobert down low and putting their best defenders on LeBron and Luka to limit their ISO weaponry. And Luka can't find the open man when they're attacking in isolation and at least start hitting some of those pull-up jumpers off the ISO plays, then the Lakers are going to be cooked. I'm sorry. And finally, we're going to talk about our boy Jokic's team, the Nuggets and the Clippers. We originally picked Denver in this series due to their great transition offense and the Clippers' terrible transition defense. But Denver is only middle of the pack among playoff teams in fast break points so far, and the Clippers are actually ahead of them in fast break points, tied with Detroit for the second most and only behind Oklahoma City. The thing that is really helping Denver in this matchup right now, while they can't get their transition game going yet, is their offensive and defensive rebound. Denver is third in the playoffs in offensive rebounding rate and third in defensive rebounding rate, while the Clippers are third to last in offensive rebound. So overall, the Clippers are lucky to have this series tied heading back to LA, and I point to Denver being that high in offensive rebounding, but only 9th out of 16 teams in second chance points. So if Denver can figure out how to finish after getting those offensive rebounds, then they can pull away in the series. And if Denver can do that plus get the transition game going, then they could just literally dominate the rest of this series. And that's all I got for you for the Western Conference. Thank you for joining us again. Next, we'll have the Eastern Conference, so stay tuned for that. Thank you.